Hello, and welcome to another path video. I'll be going over the plus limit breakthrough mechanic that will now allow you to plus 891 a unit, and will also share a few teams that are very popular for tackling the plus limit breakthrough Colosseum. To start the plus limit breakthrough process, you have to do this via the upgrade menu on a plus 297 unit. This first step will cost you 999 plus points. Then, the only way to get more pluses is to fuse the dupes of the same ID unit to itself or to the fit pluslets in a dungeon. The fusing method will give 9 plus points to each stat for each dupe used, but this is obviously not a realistic way to max out Prem units. You should really only be doing this with farmable and descended units. At the moment, the only place to encounter pluslets is in the new plus limit breakthrough Colosseum. Each time you defeat one of them, your units will get 1 plus point to each stat. In the future, pluslets and the pluslets will also be found in the contract title dungeon, which will be a lot more difficult than the Colosseum we have right now. The plus limit breakthrough Colosseum will show up twice a day as a limited time dungeon for 2 hours, or you can also buy it via coins for 1 hour with 1 billion coins. The best version to farm is the 50 stamina one, where anywhere from 4 to 7 pluslets can appear. Therefore, plus 891 in a unit can take anywhere from 29 to 50 dungeon clears. A lot of people in JP were not too happy with this new mechanic, since maxing out units requires you to spend a lot of time clearing this annoying dungeon. People are fearful that plus 891 in units will eventually be a requirement for in-game content, though management has assured people that they'll only release dungeons with plus 297 units in mind. Let's see how long that lasts. Obviously, more bulk is always better, so by plus 891 in units, you'll have an easier time team building since you won't have to stack that many team HP awakenings or use up a lot of resist latents. Or maxing out units might even let you get just enough bulk without choosing something like the team HP badge or specific collab badges. But back to the Colo. This dungeon voids a zest and does not allow any dupes. One way to get around that is by evoing the units to their other forms. The no dupes clause ignores the helper, who will not get any plus points from defeating pluslets. The units will retain the gain plus points when you de-evo them with lits, so the only thing you'll lose by de-evoing your Rosetta equips will be their evo mats. But if you use a Zinc Awakening Tamadra to unlock Rosetta Zinc Awakening, you will need to use another one if you don't have the Zinc Awakening materials. Due to the no dupe restriction, a lot of the preferred teams to farm this dungeon use 2-unit systems that will guarantee activatable boards. So think of units like Butler Kuro and Sakamata. Running 2-unit systems will free up some team slots. These 2 formation leaders can basically have 4 training slots, so your subs could technically be any unit that you want to include. But to have an easy time in this Colosseum, you will probably want to include some units with specific active skills, as the Colosseum will throw you a few mechanics here and there. Here is a quick overview of the dungeon and some notable mechanics. The biggest hit happens on the boss floor at Super Resolve. To survive, your team will need to at least have this much HP. To be able to one-hit KO every possible floor, your team should be able to deal 90 billion damage. If that's not possible, the next damage threshold to meet would be 75 billion damage to be able to 3-hit KO the boss, or 2-hit KO if you bring a shield breaker. Not 1-hit KOing the 8th floor might mean dealing with stray bomb orbs if your orb generators are unable to change all orbs. So if your team is unable to do that and you want to avoid the bombs, someone in your team should ideally have a jammer resist, or your team could run the resistant badge if you're unable to fit in that awakening. Though usually the preferred badge for a lot of teams in this dungeon is the one that gives you 20 skill boost, since this one will help you transform units with really high cooldowns like Butler Kuro and Sakamata. And since the dungeon doesn't allow any assist to begin with, there really is no downsides in choosing this badge. I'll be showing 6 different teams, though some of them are very similar, and some can't be assembled right away in an A. For example, this one uses parts in their units that won't be available until August 25th, and this team uses Rehven's new equip that he'll get on the next run of DBDC. As I mentioned, including certain units with specific active skill effects will make running this Colosseum a lot smoother. The Sakamata team with Punt would really like to have a cleric, though it is possible to stall out the Awoken Bind on floor 3 by fishing out light and heal orbs from Punt's roulette. The Sakamata team with Moscow Mule is much better than the previous version, since Moscow condenses the cleric and looping capric effects. For the other teams, a cleric in the team is very important, since these leaders need you to activate certain awakenings to activate your leader skill, or in the case of Chufu, you will need your heal OEs to be able to heal from lethal poison matches. For Butler Kuro and Violet Fez, your team will want a haste at the start of the dungeon so that you can get the system up and running ASAP. All of these teams, except for Sakamata, can run the attribute absorption latent, since you'll be matching 2 or more attributes. Using that latent means that you'll only need to include a damage absorption voider in the team to deal with possible absorptions on the 2nd and 7th floor. Though if you don't want to mess up with your leader's latents, make sure that you're on a unit with the double absorption voiding active skill. The cooldown on the absorption voider can be at most 6 turns if it lasts for 2 turns. If that's the case, then you will need to pop that absorption voider on the very first floor so that they'll be back up on time for floor 7. The Violet Fez teams without Rehven's equip will need to run a Piercer, and their active skill should last for 2 turns on at most a 4-turn cooldown. And the Violet Fez team with Rehven's equip will ideally want to have 2 haste units. These are all recommendations to deal with the mechanics in this Colosseum, but nothing is stopping you from styling out some absorptions or damage void shields. But I'll warn you that some enemies will throw other mechanics once those expire, or if you don't one hit KO them. For example, in floor 7, one of the spawns here will put up another absorption or voiding shield once theirs expire, and one of the spawns here can also skill delay you for 1 turn. Alright, I think I covered all of the important details about this new mechanic and new Colosseum, but do let me know in the comments below if I missed anything, and if you found this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. Now, I'll leave you with these different teams with some notes on what type of units to bring to have an easier time. But again, some of these builds are not yet available in NA. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thank you to Ages Number 1, Breastfeeding Obama, Dark Silencers, Eddie Ryan, and SubTap for supporting the channel. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
お帰りなさいませ、ご主人様。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。 満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。満足してもらえたなら何よりだ。
過ちは繰り返させない。逃げ回りゃ死にやしない。逃げ回りゃ死にやしない。なんと なんと過ちは繰り返させない。なんとなんとなんとなんと過ちは繰り返させない。
俺っちと遊ぼう。
逃げ回りゃ死にやしない。逃げ回りゃ死にやしない。なんとなんと
喧嘩の後は仲直りしてまた次な。
なんとなんとなんとなんと
喧嘩の後は仲直りして
過ちは繰り返させない。 となんとなんと
喧嘩の後は仲直りしてまた
なんと
ゆっくりしましょう。
セッターを動かせねえのが猫マ品質だ。
しましょう。
肩を動かさねえのが猫マ品質だ。
甘く見てると痛いの見るよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。甘く見てると痛いの見るよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。う ちの香りは特別だよ。甘く見てると痛いの見るよ。甘く見てると痛いの見るよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。
この香りはいかがかな。
うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。
少々刺激的に行こうか。
涼んでいくかい？うちの香りは特別だよ。うちの香りは特別だよ。